copy and pasted JPEG buildings, and you'll just go through and then you'll see a couple Pokemon spawn, and that's it.
If the Nintendo 64 had the ability to output in 720p and 1080p, this is how the games would look.
That was over 20 million. Something's not adding up. And Xenoblade, with even just 100 extra people, manages to make games that look like this.
Well, now it's time for the grown-ups to talk. After the Pokemon CA reveal, the same thing that happens whenever a Pokemon game is revealed happened. People shit on it, people really like it, and people start drawing a lot of the new Pokemon characters. And for the first time, I think I actually want to grab my piece of the pie, and I want to say something that maybe can clear some misconceptions about how Pokemon games are made, and why we get the games we have been getting these past couple of years, and why people's opinions matter, but they need to know where they are coming from. Hi, I'm Blizzardpant and I love Pokemon. Let's do a quick analysis of what Game Freak used to be and how we got here.
Spooky, scary skeletons.
So now, let's begin with who in the name of Jesus Christ makes our beautiful and broken Pokemon games. Some time ago, there was this guy called Satoshi Tajiri. And this crazy fella loved to play it in the arcades, like really loved it. To the point that he battled other players for the top spot on the machines and would help others to beat games such as Sebius, whatever. And he was so into that game that whenever someone said a false rumor about the game, he would spring into action and arm actually every single deceiver. He even got into heated arguments when people said there was a secret sequel for Sebius called Sebius Star. And people with this devotion and aggressiveness towards the arcade era is what some called Game Freaks in Japan. He was so good that he also used to teach people how to use what at the time were called exploits that nowadays we know as bugs, to finish the game with new record numbers and stuff like that. He even actually met the Sebius creator Masanobu Endo at the arcades, where he could occasionally play prototypes of new games. And this love for rumors and just pure display of skill in the arcades would grow a seed inside his head that will come out at something that will change his life forever. But not yet. So, this hero that was just the greasiest gamer in the arcades and also loved to catch bugs and put rhino beetles to fuck each other up, wanted to create something that will serve the purpose of giving information to arcade gamers everywhere like he has been doing in his local arcades. So he came up with the idea of a magazine called Game Freak. It was just like the Nintendo Power magazines we had, just smaller and Japaneser. And a good number of gamers will get them and actually enjoy them. One of them being the artist by the name Ken Sugimori. Yes, that Ken Sugimori. If you know, you know. If you don't know, I'ma tell you who he is in a little bit. So, Sugimori and Satoshi joined forces to make the Game Freak magazine even better, using Satoshi's knowledge in gaming and Sugimori's artistic skills. And just at the right time, since video games were on the rise and people wanted to understand how video games work, and programming errors in arcade games or bugs like the 10 million points in Sebius, the game Satoshi was so attached to. The first magazine in 1983 featured Dig Dog's face, Taiso Hori, and the magazines were typically released with a length of around 28 pages. At the beginning stages, Satoshi hand-wrote the magazines, but later in their life cycle, he outsourced them to a professional printing company. This love of gaming made this group of passionate people start to develop their own game. A game that would even reach America and have a manga spin-off, a game that would touch loads of hearts with the majestic music of the legend Junichi Masuda, a gem we all know so well. Quinty, a Famicom game about a guy named Carton that has to rescue his girlfriend Jenny from his younger sister, the famous Quinty. That's the name of the game! Who is jealous that Carton gives all of his attention to Jenny. Masuda explained that at the time, Game Freak didn't possess any official development equipment, so they had to hack the Famicom to understand how it worked in order to begin the work on the game. I don't care who you are, that's metal as fuck. And well, since Nintendo wasn't interested in Quinty, due to Game Freak not yet being a formal development company, Tajiri reached out to Namco, who agreed to have a contract surrounding Quinty and Quinty alone, so long as Game Freak was an incorporated company. Quinty was a co-op or solo game where, like an old arcade style design, you will clear multiple stages that will get harder and harder until you defeat Quinty at the end. as the player will flip tiles to make the enemies that look like babies hit the walls and fucking explode! Oh no, the baby! Or Oni! I don't really know with all this Japanese yokai that exists. Oh god, what have I done? No! And I mean, the game was pretty okay, and the art was amazing until the Western art came out.
Oh! Ew! Dude! What the fuck?
Maybe the Pokemon graphics are a way to take revenge of what America did so many years ago to the different Japanese artists. But that was just the beginning. Game Freak's team just kept growing. Satoshi worked at Epic Sony as an advisor and heard that the Super Famicom was going to release and they wanted games. So with the Game Freak team, they pitched a game called Jerry Boy. A game where you played as a human transformed into a blob by his jealous brother that has a crush on Amy, the princess. Yeah, jealousy and Game Freak go hand in hand. Maybe that's why they sued Palworld. Oh shit! I went there! Whoa! Well, the thing is that Game Freak had somewhat of a clear idea of the game they wanted to make, but they didn't have the tools or time to make it happen, so they decided to work on several projects to fund that secret project. So they went ahead with Jerry Boy, a game that was envisioned as an RPG, but then evolved into a platformer after they realized that they could use the shapeless design of the blob character as part of the gameplay. And after the poor sales of Quinty, they decided to make the game more action-oriented, so it would be attractive to gamers, and also they realized that they could make the character resemble the slimes of Dragon Quest, a character that proved to be popular already. So they went in that direction, and Satoshi and Sugimori made a lot of redesigns with the team to make the character cuter and cool to be appealing to both men and women, and these skills will come in handy in a future project. After that, Satoshi stayed working on other projects while Sugimori stayed to direct the sequel for Jerry Boy, which will never see the light of day. But in this failure, the team will grow since they will meet a new recruit for Game Freak called Ryosuke Taniguchi, who will go on to be a scenario writer for 2 future Game Freak games. I couldn't find a picture of him, so he will be represented as this Kirby-like thing, because it's easy to draw. Sue me. But one game that will become crucial to Game Freak's road will be a little game that was trying to release on the Famicom on 1991. A little cute dinosaur called Yoshi that really wanted to have his own game, and Game Freak will work on it at the same time that they will work on the port for the upcoming Game Boy console. This will become the first time Nintendo will work together with Game Freak. The project was offered by Nintendo and suggested by Satoshi's friend Tsunekazu Ishihara, that guy from the Pokemon Directs, a member of a studio called Ape Inc. Remember this is important, since Ape is the team that will go on to make the Earthbound games. And this game will also be a huge flex for Game Freak's core team, since Sugimori will act as both game designer and graphic designer, and Junichi Masuda will compose the entire soundtrack of the game with original tracks, despite the game being from the Super Mario franchise, an already existing and huge name in the gaming industry, showing Nintendo they really knew what they were doing. So for a while, Game Freak will keep doing more and more games to keep funding the secret project they've been cooking in the back. They released Magical Taruruto-kun, a Japanese-only 2D platformer for the Mega Drive. Oh, Mega what? Oh, Jeremy, shh. Where a lot of Masuda's music will evolve and they will meet other composers that will work in future projects and anime. And then, in August 1993, Game Freak will release another Nintendo collaboration called Mario and Wario. This was a game planned to be released in America and was presented in the September issue of 1993 of the Nintendo Power magazine, but it stayed inside of Japan even though there is no Japanese characters whatsoever inside the game. The game consists of players using the newly released Super Famicom mouse that controls a fairy called Wanda that you will use to guide Mario, Peach or Yoshi through a stage where you activate multiple triggers to make them reach Luigi safely at the end of the level. It was simple, but really well designed and with a fun premise. This game will only deepen the bond of these two companies, and also they will meet future associates such as Motofumi Fujiwara, who debuted as an artist in the game, who would go on to be instrumental on the future of Game Freak, as well as a programmer called Shigeki Morimoto, who will join Game Freak and help Satoshi to add one last thing to his secret project on the last moments in production. And this kept going for a while. They released Non Tanto Isho Kururu Kururu puzzle in Super Famicom. Say that 3 times. Non tanto isho kururu kururu, non tanto isho kururu kururu, non tanto isho kururu. Forget it. It isn't that hard. And then they released an action platformer with the name of Pulseman, directed by Game Freak's fathers, Sugimori and Satoshi. This game actually reached America and was on the Wii Virtual Console and received 3 official released license covers based on the game soundtrack by the GOAT Masuda. You can actually hear how close his style was getting to what we experience in Pokemon games in the future. Shush! What a banger! And this project will make them meet Atsuko Nishida, who will do something that will change Game Freak image forever. After all of this time working, growing and making connections, Satoshi thought that it was finally time to unveil his secret project. So Satoshi pitched the idea to Ape Inc., the studio that helped him connect with Nintendo, and of course, Nintendo, about this little RPG game that combined his love of RPGs and insect collecting, and the love he had for arcade rumors, called Capsule Monsters, a pitch he will do in 1990. However, after looking at the idea, the game was rejected, and said the trademark was having issues with the name. So Satoshi worked around it, shortening to Capomon, and finally settled on the name Pocket Monsters. In 1995, Ape Inc. disbanded, but with the help of Nintendo and HAL's Laboratory president, HAL Laboratory being a small game development company that will become, I don't know, the developers of Smash Freaking Bros. Well, they created a new company called Creatures Inc., which had their own idea of a game called Toto with a similar creature collecting concept. But Creatures Inc. rejected the game out of respect of their previous friend Satoshi Tajiri, who pitched them Pocket Monsters not so long ago. Creatures president at the time and ex-Ape employee, our good friend Tsunekazu Ishihara, said,
"To tell you the truth, Creatures already has its own idea of a game like Pokemon, something incredibly similar. The game was called Toto, and it used the Game Boy like an insect cage to be filled with creatures you owned. At the time we were talking about it, Tajiri brought us the idea of Pokemon, where you'd catch monsters and trade them with a link cable. It wasn't a question of which idea came first, but we did think Tajiri would wonder, how could they do this to me when it was my idea?"
So, with that hump, Satoshi kept working on the idea and pitched it straight to Nintendo and Shigeru Miyamoto. Yes, that's Shigeru, the creator of Mario. And Shigeru had a lot of confidence in the game's idea, so with his help, the game finally got greenlit. Miyamoto was also the one who gave the idea of splitting the games onto different versions, after hearing Satoshi's enthusiasm about kids trading Pokemon between each other. And that finally started the production of Pokemon Red and Green, the first Pokemon games where this small team that has been growing all these years fused their passion and skills to release a fantastic piece of media. Masuda, the composer that has been with the team since the beginning, composed the entirety of the soundtrack for the first generation of Pokemon. Sugimori helped on Pokemon designs, and he was the art director of the game. But all the other talents that they got from past developments also contributed a lot, like Motofumi Fujiwara, the artist who helped them in Mario & Wario, who ended up being the creator of Eevee, Jolteon, and Flareon, and how Atsuko Nishida, with her first work being Pulseman, took a gigantic part of the character designs with Sugimori, and well, she being the creator of what will become the mascot of the franchise, Pikachu on the freaking flesh. And she was also a key aspect in the creation of the non-Pokemon characters along with Sugimori. And let's not forget Ryosuke Taniguchi from Jerry 2, who helped to write the scenario for Pokemon games too, and Shigeki Morimoto, the programmer who joined Mario & Wario. While talking with Satoshi, one day Satoshi told him about the idea of mythical Pokemon that were born from his love of rumors in gaming. So Shigeki helped Satoshi to program one last Pokemon in the game, the mythical 151 Mew. That's why its code and presence in the game is all weird and buggy. And that's how the Juggernaut known today as Pokemon will be born. The game was so big and could be stretched so much for future ideas and different merchandise that the Pokemon Company was born. And it was built thanks to the magnificent, the hero, the legend, the god.
On my business card, I am a corporate president. In my mind, I am a game developer. But in my heart, I am a gamer.
Satoru Iwata. Satoru was the head of Nintendo and the president of a laboratory that helped 8 Inc. to create Creatures Inc., the studio that will help for the creation of Pokemon and whom will give Game Freak the opportunity to make this game a reality. So the Pokemon Company was born and divided in 3 serving sizes, so each company can have an equal share of it. Game Freak being the developers, Creatures Inc. helping in design and other aspects with merchandising like the trading card game will come to be, and Nintendo being the publisher, not the developers. This is a common misconception until this fucking day. Nintendo does not produce Pokemon games. They do not have anyone of their team helping to code, design, or anything. They publish, they give Pokemon a house, and they get some of the earnings of the franchise, but they do not participate on the production. That's why Pokemon doesn't have that Nintendo polish. And Creatures Inc. is responsible for spin-offs of the game. And to this day, they are the only ones that can create and animate the 3D models of the Pokemon. All the other non-Pokemon creatures and models fall into Game Freak's umbrella, but the Pokemon are Creatures Inc. and Creatures Inc. only. But okay, I want to tell you one more story about Game Freak before jumping into the present.
Spooky, scary skeleton.
You see, Pokemon was such a big success that Game Freak started working on what would be called Pokemon 2, later changed to Pokemon Gold and Silver, and Nintendo announced the release in 1999. But at the same time, Game Freak was working in trying to localize the original games for audiences outside of Japan, and that was taking a toll on them, and the team started to be overworked. So Nintendo issued an apology and postponed the game for a year later. At this time, Game Freak was doing everything in its power to work out the code to do the localizations, and to pass the battle system also created by Shigeki Morimoto into what would become Pokemon Stadium, that was getting handled by Creatures Inc. because of the "we are the only ones that can model Pokemon" part of the deal. And Pokemon Stadium is just a bunch of Pokemon models and nothing else. And well, they needed the code for the battle system, but with the lack of documentation, they were having a bad time. They had so much on their plate, and let's remember, they were and still are kind of a small studio. But our hero, Iwata-san, realized that they were in trouble. So he decided to work extra hours outside of his work as director on Nintendo and help them work out the problems with the code, which he did because he's a freaking legend. He helped them clean the battle system code and even helped to make the image compressing of the game better, which made the game even lighter. And it's rumored that this coding trick Iwata figured with his freaking Mr. Miyagi magic hands is what led Game Freak add the Kanto region to these games. And then Pokemon Gold and Silver were released. I think it was 1999 in Japan and 2000 in America. A love letter to Pokemon, which included a new region with new Pokemon designs and the old region as extra content with the old battles we all loved from the first game. And this shows how games were made with genuine love back then. The team worked as hard as they could because they wanted everyone to experience a game they deserved. And Iwata believed so much in them and was so in love with the games that he helped put in extra unpaid hours of his own to make this game become a reality. And that's what Pokemon is. A genuine work of art by gamers who really care. Or at least, that's what Pokemon used to be some years ago. Pokemon has released a lot of games and ate the entire world, becoming the biggest franchise in the world. And the games, after being only in handheld devices for Nintendo, finally reached our home consoles in November 2019 with Pokemon Sword and Shield. The trading card game became the biggest one in the world, enjoyed by kids and adults alike. It has come to the point that neckbeards fight for scalping rights in Pokemon vending machines. So, do you think Thanos is busy right now? Maybe motherfucker had a point. And everyone has Pokemon and old times with them with the release of Pokemon Go, one of the last things Iwata helped develop. Pokemon even has events where everyone can reunite to celebrate the best players in the world.
1,400 people showed up to this tournament hoping and dreaming to win the entire thing. But it wasn't enough!
Really bringing the experience of being a Pokemon fan to a new era. You can pursue a competitive career in a variety of games, or content creation, that's me, or just enjoy them casually, since Pokemon is a franchise that now is here to stay. But if Pokemon has grown to such heights, why have Pokemon games suffer in quality? Since the release of Pokemon games in console, it's been a constant war with fans and Game Freak making games that sell really good numbers, but at the same time, they leave the fans enraged and wanting more. I mean, I'm a fan, I want more, that's my source. Since they don't have the standards of a game of the biggest franchise in the world should have. Why do players have to eat the same old regurgitated mess since the release of the 4th generation? Why has Pokemon, instead of bringing joy to everyone, is separating fan bases and enraging everyone? Well, I have a couple of ideas that I think should be put on display. So, don't click away, I see you, this has been really educational and it doesn't have been skibidi enough for you or whatever. But I think this is something everyone should hear, okay? Okay, let's continue. I say don't go! Game Freak have really gone down with the quality of their products, and they started implementing something I like to call the Game Freak rule. I've talked about this concept in a video before, but nobody watched that shit, so let me explain it from the beginning. Again. Okay, so Game Freak has in their hands one in a lifetime opportunity, and that is being able to produce and release games of the biggest franchise in the world. And if they want, they could stop the development of so many products and stop suffocating everyone with the sheer amount of half-baked content Pokemon released to the public. But at the same time, they don't want to do that. And that's where the Game Freak rule comes into play. They could just put all their forces, money and strength into making a giant open-world MOBA real-time fighting game that makes your dick grow 10 inches. But if they do, they will sell that one game and keep updating it, and that will be the death of Pokemon games. Because how would you one-up that concept? That's really everything the franchise can give to the players right now. They will have to really break their heads and come out with a new concept, and that is just not rentable. They need to keep Pokemon afloat. After all, it's their main conduit of money and relevancy, because their other games have been buried down the forgotten graveyard. Like we learned a couple of minutes ago, Game Freak used to be this all-purpose small team that could tackle a lot of different projects and put all their pussies into it, because they were Game Freak. But now they are that studio that makes bad Pokemon games. People don't see them as a real studio because they have failed multiple times, and they don't want to keep pursuing something that doesn't work. And well, they also don't have the forces to do so. So, in a way that counters that, they release Pokemon games with as little changes as possible. Gamers want Pokemon to evolve into the current state of graphics and gaming.
Okay, make the Pokemon 3D and the world as linear as possible, but with a new gimmick, Mega Evolution and Fairy type. That will keep them busy.
Okay, now the gamers want the games to evolve. They want more.
No, they don't want that. You sell them nostalgia and the best generation out there. I mean, I didn't say it, he said it, so it should be true.
Yo, boss, the gamers want Pokemon in the overworld.
Well, put 1 or 2 Pokemon in the overworld and make them stay in the same place.
Okay, that should do it. Boss, gamers want a real open world game with Pokemons that live in it, not just stay in place.
Well, copy the work of our small team in the back, more about that later, and put Pokemon in it with better graphics, but just a little bit, and make the Pokemon stay in place again, goddammit!
I mean, whatever. And that's the Game Freak rule. Instead of putting all their forces into one game that may take years to develop, they make like they hear the public and add one small change to the game formula each generation, ensuring that they have things to sell for years. But Game Freak is lazy and it is yearly releases to keep the motor going. They develop full games in 3 years. 3 freaking years! Do you know how little that is? And for a team of 212 employees that need to move in design, programming, and all that stuff, is little time. And not counting that the modeling and animation department of the Pokemon are in a whole other studio, meaning they can't touch the Pokemon while making Pokemon games. And to rub salt on the wound, they want to keep their work on the same engine they've been working since they jumped to consoles and 3D, making this a weak engine. They aren't using Unreal and stuff like that. Supposedly, they are open to the idea, so they can have more freelance work for the studio, since it's easier for someone to have Unreal and know how to use it than learn the engine they implement in their games, making the freelance developers a non-existing option. So, this amalgamation of Game Freak's laziness, the torture the team has trying to release a full game in 3 freaking years, god damn, and the fucked up engine, and the limit of the Game Freak rule, well, that is the reason the games suffer at the end. That's why they are the way they are.
But Laserpant, you said they are the biggest franchise in the world. Why can't they develop something better even in that small of a development window? They could buy a small country and make them work for them.
Let me tell you why. You stranger that somehow got into my house. Meh, don't worry, not the first time. He'll be back. Let's put it on perspective with what's going on with You see, Invincible is an animated show that is really good, but it has a freaking sad quality of animation. This shit reaches amazing level of character writing that is so freaking sad looking at these moving PNGs. Oh god. But you gotta understand that this is not reflecting the animator's skill. I mean, look at this! They sure know what they are doing, and they are really good at doing it. The problem is that Invincible is being marketed as a yearly season show, even when it wasn't, making the animators work in a really tight schedule. Skadoosh. Because you have to fit the voice acting, storyboarding, layout, rough, tie down, clean, coloring, and compositing of a full season in a really small amount of time.
Sure, yeah. Although like 90% of that, if I'm being honest, sounds completely made up.
Making these animators have to take shortcuts to reach the deadline. And the fact that this is Amazon and they could give them a shit ton of money isn't gonna help making the series looks better. That is not how it works. Pumping money into your animators is not going to make them work faster like the workers in that Game Grumps Supermarket series. No! I don't know why people have that misconception. And hiring more animators, yeah, sure it can help speeding up some processes. But there is a point when that isn't going to help. I mean, what do you think is gonna happen? They will hire more animators that doesn't have a scene to work on because every single one is being handled already. So do you think they're just going to grab the hand of other animators making the freaking animation explode to magnificent levels? No! Because the problem is not with the money. Even though, yes, please pay your animators a lot, they deserve it, but their problem here is with the time. Time is everything. Like you can give 100 animators a week to do something and they will struggle because they need to write a storyboard and all that shit, and you could give 100 days to one animator and he could whip out an amazing polished piece of art. Time is the currency in which quality moves in the world of development. That's why money is not a factor if time is lacking. But okay, also, you see, the Pokemon Company has the biggest franchise in the world. But like I said, Pokemon is divided in 3 parts. Nintendo, Game Freak, and Creatures Inc. So all the earnings must be divided and probably the results of each branch stay in that branch. For example, the video games part of Game Freak is the weakest part of the Pokemon Company earnings, earning them a lot less than the trading card game part of the business, or the anime, or the merchandise, like school supplies and t-shirts and plushies. This is the part that makes the real money, and the biggest franchise in the world is thanks to this branch. that is managed by Creatures Inc. So yeah, Game Freak created Pokemon, but only thanks to these two shareholders. So even if they make some money back, the major part probably stays in the companies that funded the merchandise, because Creatures Inc. and Nintendo and the money Game Freak makes with those games is just not comparable. So if each branch stays with what they made, and let me just reassure you one more time, this is just a theory. A company shareholding theory! But okay, after all of that said, even if they two share the same amount of income, this still doesn't deal with the problem of time being really limited for their development. So Game Freak is just a studio that fought to exist and is fighting to stay afloat, and the way they are being able to do it is by just pumping Pokemon games left and right, because they do lack skill, they do lack creativity, because the show isn't run by the original team that made everything, because of genuine love for the medium. This is run by businessmen like a lot of gaming companies are now. The difference is that they excel in numbers. Even a small studio of these franchises is more than the complete number of workers in Game Freak as a whole. And this can help their trash come out faster and look prettier. But remember, they have more time to make these pieces of trash. Game Freak does not have the time. But Game Freak has no weapons in all of this aside from the money. This is what everyone is just stuck in. The biggest franchise in the world doesn't mean anything if Game Freak doesn't expand, search for help in other places, or take their freaking time to release games. Because yes, I'm not hiding the fact that is Game Freak's fault. All of this that is happening with the Pokemon games is their fault. If the video games are the weakest part of the franchise, it's only because Game Freak is not freaking moving. Game Freak sucks because Game Freak is keeping itself down, Ouroboros style. This corporation part is why so many games from AAA developers have been freaking forgotten by the consumers, and it's so refreshing seeing the small projects, but with people that do care for the medium, excel. That's how the industry started, genuine passion. And that's why I still love Pokemon, even after all that has been said, because this is exactly what is happening with the birth of Legends Arceus. Okay, it's still Game Freak, right? It's still Pokemon, right? But it is not the same team behind the mainline games. We also saw the freaking Teradix, where a presentation for the pitch of Pokemon Legends Arceus was revealed. A presentation about a Game Freak employer that is a simple fan of the franchise, just like us, that went to the Game Freak suits and showed them an idea of how to make the franchise really move forward. He wanted to make Pokemon great again, and this hero got the green light.
Yo, Laserpant, but Pokemon Legends Arceus looks like shit too.
See, I told you he will be back. Let me call the authorities.
You jokester.
But yeah, these games look rough because if the mainline Pokemon games are rough around the edges and everything else, imagine the game of someone who pitched he could make a real Pokemon game and used scraps to make it a reality. He was lent a part of the team and studios that will help with the development of Gen 9. And that sounds good, but they gave it to him only for 1 year, since Pokemon Scarlet and Violet will start development 1 year after Legends Arceus, and more than a half of the team needed to divide their work between Legends Arceus and Gen 9, Gen 9 being the priority, making this almost feel like an indie development. He worked with scraps and extra time for the team that was working on Gen 9, and even the studios that was helping for the development were then called to start development on Gen 9, making the production of the game hell. They had 3 years, as always. They needed to release information to the public, and that's why the game looks so freaking rough in the first trailers. They are not moving. Just look at the difference of the teams. Scarlet and Violet had 5 more pages than the whole team of Legends Arceus, and half of the team or more had to prioritize Gen 9. If doing one game is really hard, just ask Shroud and Laserbeam. Oh shit. Imagine developing 2 at the same time with a 3-year deadline. So yeah, Legends Arceus could look like shit, and you can laugh at the bugs and poor rendering, but this motherfucker did it. This motherfucker pulled the best Pokemon game in existence, in my opinion, with freaking scraps. I don't know if the director of the game is the same one that made the pitch and begged for this game to be made. That's why I'm not giving him a name. But imagine, against all odds and working on the boiler room of freaking Game Freak, releasing one of the most praised Pokemon games. This story feels just like the old Game Freak, making everything they can with a small team to gain experience and make themselves known, to release a passion project that will eat the world years later. This guy wants to do the same. He loves Pokemon and it shows. The game finally felt fresh, and in my opinion is leagues ahead of Scarlet and Violet. Remember when I said that Game Freak was stealing from his team on the back? I mean, come on, obviously they steal from Legends Arceus to start development on the Gen 9 games. And this guy could be the stepping stone Pokemon needed to come back stronger than ever in the gaming scene. And if you don't think one person has that power, this is One Piece before Tetsuya Ganamine, and this is One Piece after Tetsuya Ganamine become the director. When the head of the team is passionate about the product and know how to work with their team, every year will start to turn. See what I did there? Making new opportunities and making even the producers gain new perspectives, opening the door to things like Megumi Ishitani, animating and directing amazing jaw-dropping moments for the anime, and even a full special episode that is probably one of the best things I saw last year. This episode is a clean 10 out of 10. And having more young directors and animators like Tu Young Se, sorry for that pronunciation, I don't know, Tu Young Che, who made a lot of action animation for the Wano arc, but then was promoted to animation director, making the quality just sky fucking rocket out of orbit, or Keiichi Ishikawa as a layout and Genga corrector and new chief animator director who started in Seoul, just when One Piece quality will start to pick up steam. He will keep working in Whole Cake and, well, you know, Wano. And well, future arcs are just in another level, and the producer started to invite more talent from around the globe, making these new and passionate animators that grew up with One Piece make the show now, making it a true love letter to the manga we all fell in love with so many years ago. Because yeah, One Piece is old. There are even Mexican animators there now. Whoa, let's go, dogs! Make your country proud! This dog went to my art school, and still here I am. And everything just because the head of the team started moving and reaching for new opportunities. This person alone isn't the one that just exploded the quality in the product, but because the first year started turning, everything in the machine started working to the point that the results speak for themselves. And when they wanted to put a pause to the One Piece anime for the first time in its runtime, Toei accepted, because they know the results of the hiatus will speak for themselves when they are out. A move Toei wouldn't have made ever, but one person turned into one team, showed a huge organization, and that they are worth believing in, making a studio almost no one liked because of the quality of their products, and you know, that copyright shit they do, to one that listened and accepted that that move would be the best for the franchise. In the words of the director, let's give One Piece the respect it deserves. And well, all that brings us to Pokemon Legends CA, a sequel to that Pokemon Legends Arceus that felt so different, that felt so unique, and against all odds conquered the hearts of the players. And now we are having the same issue as always. People are calling out the ugly graphics, they are calling out the setting of the game, they are calling out the small development cycle. But man, can we just give this guy a break? He fought for us to release a game we love while spilling his sweat and blood. And of course the sweat and blood of the team too. This Pokemon game that shouldn't even exist fucking conquered and became the best one. And now that he is back and probably still just working with scraps, since we all know Gen 10 is in the works, people still spits on his face and call his drawings ugly. I get it if we do it to the main Game Freak games, because it has been like that for years. Yeah, you have no time to develop, but that's because you decide to do that. You don't have enough workers, but you decide to do that. And you close your doors to other engines. You are making your games stay behind years of development because you want to keep selling fast food. Well, that's alright, we can all point and laugh at Game Freak, but we really want to point and laugh at a passion project of someone who only wants to give us a better Pokemon experience? These guys took 2 games to bring us things we've been wanting since freaking Pokemon Diamond and Pearl. He gave us the first time we could catch Pokemon in real time. We had different size of creatures and an open world with a different battle system. A game that feels different from all the others in existence and feels like a natural progression for Pokemon. And now in the second game, number 2, numero 2, not 10 different games, 2, he is giving us all that with also the ability to move around with our Pokemon and fight in real-time battles, kin to Xenoblade. And we are still punching this guy in the groin? In 2 games, he's pushing the franchise forward more than Game Freak in literally almost 3 decades. 1 year freaking short. I know that if we don't have the context, yeah, it may feel like this game is freaking pulling our hair again. And having Pokemon on a chokehold until they finally release the game we want, once they made billions and billions of dollars. But this guy that is working his ass off against everything Game Freak stands for is still being pursued by people. I find that depressing. It just feels like some plotline where this brave warrior came out of freaking war, saving our lives while losing his sight and all of his team in battle, only to be greeted by boos from the people because he has the logo of another hero we don't like. And that's why I think context is really important. If you watch the Powerplex scene where he just keeps saying invincible and the title card keeps appearing without context of the gag, you might get really angry and get the hell out of there. It just breaks the immersion. But with the context of the title screen gag, you might even find it hilarious, since it helps to drive home the point that no one is taking him seriously. Context is a powerful weapon, and I think we all need this context when talking about the Legends game. Because Pokemon, yeah, I lost faith in Game Freak when Pokemon Sword and Shield released. I hated those games and I really started losing hope on the franchise. But Legends, I think, revitalized everyone's interest, not just mine. My story with Pokemon, even though can feel personal, used like all those relatable memes that you see.
I do that.
That leave you feeling like, huh, so no experience is special and personal. Well, I think that happened with this game too. I think a lot of fans, after playing it, realized that this might be the turning point for Pokemon and started believing in the franchise again. When it comes to video games, because everything else is going strong. But that's why, please, think about these games as an independent effort of a small group of Game Freak rebels to give us the game we want. Not as Game Freak itself. Don't villainize these troopers, because I heard a lot of things that pisses me off when it comes to criticism. I love criticizing things, and you know that. This is the channel. But okay. 1. Yeah, the graphics look rough. I already explained why. But at the same time, yeah, they do look bad, even compared to Pokemon Legends, because Legends had an art style of its own. It was unapologetically itself, but this one looks like a better version of Scarlet and Violet. Pokemon should go on a more stylized art and lighting style, just like Breath of the Wild. The graphics aren't something in the King of Monster Hunter or Final Fantasy. They are so stylized and the colors and lighting are so freaking next level that the game is one of the most gorgeous games out there, even if it ain't have those realistic graphics and shit. And I think Pokemon needs this. They need to find their own style, like Puss in Boots, like Xenoblade, not like Shrek. I'm sorry, I like character design, I like evolution, I like new stuff, but this Shrek looks weird. You can make it look older without just like making him look like something generated by AI. We had a perfectly good Shrek here. I just think it missed the line. This ain't it, Chief. But my theory is that it looks like this now because they could use assets from Pokemon Scarlet and Violet to make the work less heavy and put in the effort in other aspects of the game, like designing the city and the Pokemon battle system, which I still personally don't know how to feel. I love turn-based combat. Final Fantasy, my favorite franchise, and I don't like the fighting system of Xenoblade games. I'm trying to get into them. I'm actually kind of making a video about it. But okay, it is something new, like we always ask for, and I'm willing to try it. If we ask for new and bold ideas, we should be able to accept when they come. Like, why are we angry because the game is inside a city the whole time? Does being inside a city make an open world game bad? So, now everyone is on my side and think GTA is overrated all of a sudden? Or does it only apply when it comes to Pokemon?
Pokemon is a game about exploration and adventure, and keeping us tied into a city is a dumb idea.
You! I thought the police got you.
Yeah, but I want to hear you defending this piece of shit too.
Yeah, what do you have to say to defend that shit, huh? Well, harsh, but yes, you're right. I would love a Pokemon game that has a real open world, not this placebo type shit, and an amazing adventure. Clearly. Seriously, guys, watch these videos. I kill myself doing them. This one alone took me 3 months. That's why I'm scared of starting my pilot episode for my series. Animation is hard. But you know what? Those games exist already. Every single Pokemon game is like that. Every single one. And the last Pokemon Legends game gave us the best variation of this to this day. And J9 was a really underwhelming open world, but it exists. So if we ask for new stuff, what is wrong about having something new? Something bold. Exploring a city for the first time in Pokemon history can actually be pretty dope too, because the cities we had in the past games were not able to give us that exploration aspect. They were just a background, and that's all, a passing by area really. But here, for the first time, we can really explore what a city will be when there are Pokemon freely moving around the world. How are people interacting with them? And how do we interact with them? That's why I said I hate when people ask for new, they get new, and then they cry, "No, I want it just like every other Pokemon game. Yeah, those ones that I didn't like." Like, are we kidding? Are you listening to yourself? Guys, I think these guys that are trying to give us new and exciting Pokemon adventures are actually listening, like really listening for the first time. And that is why everything is a little bit different. I already played those Pokemon games, and of course, I would love one just like my Pokemon Aquamarine Peach, but I never thought about a game like this. Even in a year-long Pokemon videos vendor, and months of animation work and creation of a semi-Peach, it never went through my head making the cities something we can explore too. And it's exciting to see where this goes, from the hands of real Pokemon fans, and not the main team that has just destroyed our hopes and dreams over and over again. And yeah, this wild area is small, but it's just the tutorial, dogs. We don't even know how the game is going to work in its totality. Just like everyone told Legends Arceus to fuck off because in the trailer it looked like trash, and the frames and the lacking of Pokemon, they aren't showing anything. It's because the game is going to be empty and uninspired, but then the fucking game shut everyone up by being the best. We still have time to learn what this game is about. We don't know everything, and it may surprise us in a lot of different ways. That's why I said, let's have hope on them. Not on Game Freak or in Gen 10 or anything like that. Let's have hope on these Pokemon fans that stood against a giant corporation to make the game we actually want. Let's believe in the power of human creativity, a genuine need to tell a story and create a good game. Let's believe in Pokemon Legends. And like I said, this movement, just like in One Piece, can make a chain effect. And it kinda shows with the other reveal we got already. A battle simulator for Pokemon. Something that can help the mainline games just focus on being good freaking games like Arceus did. Instead of trying to juggle a lot of things in its competitive and story, this shows that Game Freak is kinda ready to move on. The good influence of this team can be starting to bleed onto all of the team, making its gears start running for the first time in years. This could be the start of something that will push Pokemon to the status it deserves. Just think about it. Maybe because the competitive is going to be in this game alone, the mainline games don't actually have to take only 3 years to develop. They could take more because the competitive can still be alive and played in Pokemon Worlds without having to take away time from the developers. And this shows growth, because do you really think the Game Freak that released this as the first console game, or this mobile ass game as a full price game for the Switch, and making it the third or maybe fourth remake of the first generation games? Or the Game Freak that released this mess of a game with nothing new and no values as the Gen 4 remake, one of the fan favorites? Or the Game Freak that released this as the follow-up to their first open area game, will release something like this? A game we all been asking for? No! Or at least, I don't think so. Let's hope Game Freak starts to learn that Pokemon can actually be amazing and keep letting their developers make some more experimental games. And games we actually been asking for a long time. And maybe even like One Piece, if Game Freak finally decides to move on to engines that can be used more easily around the world, like Unreal, they can start having freelance work and more of it. And like One Piece, the ones applying for the work will be fans, passionate people that will put all of them into the product so we can have the games we have been screaming for. Because now, us, the fans, will have part on the development of the game. And because I know Palworld is going to be forced into the conversation, okay, here's what I think about the whole Palworld thing. Yeah, Palworld proved that people are indeed hungry for Pokemon content, collecting monsters content, open world content, and the game is pretty freaking fun. Everyone thought it was going to be a meme, but all of us got hooked on it day one. The thing with the game is, even though fun, even though it might be a wake-up call to Game Freak, I can't sing its praises that much. We trash Pokemon because of how it looks and runs, and this game runs like trash and it's unpolished as fuck. It is an Unreal Engine assessed Bukaki, and some designs are, well, controversial to say the least. And all of that is okay if the game is fun. Well, everything except for the theft part. But the thing is, I can't sing its praises that much because the Palworld team didn't do anything new. They took Pokemon Legends Arceus gameplay and, well, Pokemon Hold Stick, slapped Arch Survival gameplay onto it, and added the same things all open world games have stolen from Breath of the Wild. Even though the game is super fun, they didn't break any barriers or discovered something. They just copied someone else's homework that is already a proof concept and sell them back to us with a new hat.
But she's got a new hat.
And the game shows that there is truly a thirst for gamers to experience a good and complete Pokemon game. And I do believe this new team can do it. If Pokemon Legends Arceus proves something, is that if they are given enough time, they could give us the Pokemon game we want. But I also like the idea of them just proving new and bold concepts in the Legends series, to find sweet spots that can make for a wonderful Pokemon game that no one saw coming. And if we have to endure less than stellar graphics and rush development time until it starts gaining a bigger traction and making Game Freak the studio it should be, well, I think it's worth it. But at the same time, we don't know if Game Freak just dipped his finger onto this team too, and the game is going to be the worst Pokemon game ever. We never know. Is that alright, officer?